Okay, so I'm gonna make this video. I didn't want to because I personally have not experienced it. Well, I guess I kind of have now, um, but as far as I'm aware, I have not been adopted. So I have to, just like when I speak about having children and stuff, I have to be respectful in the sense. Like, I haven't had children, so there's only so much opinion I can give about that. No matter how much I learn about my own life, I still have to be respectful. Okay, so I've noticed a huge thing when it comes to those that have been adopted. There's going to be certain triggers for those individuals alone, just with the idea of being abandoned or unwanted. Okay, now I personally know what it's like to feel that. I know what it's like to feel unwanted or feel misplaced or feel just not appreciated at all. Like I would be better off not existent, not here. I've been through that and I understand it completely. It's a terrible feeling, and it's one that it can strike up all sorts of negative emotions, from anger to sadness, depression, to hate, to rage, to all those things. Just the thought of not being wanted, especially by those that are supposed to love you the most. I understand that. I know exactly. Well, I know nothing, but I remember a whole lot. I understand the emotions and the feelings that can come up from that. But now get back to what I was talking about, being adopted. Everybody is well aware that the system itself for the adoption, like the agencies and all that, and there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on with that. We're all aware of that. I'm pretty sure you're aware of it. If not, I'm letting you know right now. There's some shady things that go on when it comes to the adoption agencies, and when it comes to people that take in children, and when it comes to orphanages and all that. There's horror stories that go on with that sort of thing, okay? With all sorts of abuse and neglect. Now, what I'm getting at is that there are individuals that have been adopted, and some of them integrate themselves well. They do really well. They are even told and explained that they're adopted, and some of them are not. Some of them, when they do realize that they are adopted or they've been told that, they're going to have mixed feelings, right? Imagine feeling like your own mother. Now I can attest to how that would feel, because even though I may not on paper be adopted, I feel what it's like to be not wanted by your own mother, okay? And I can only imagine those that are not able to process that emotion, those that are not able to understand that, because there's going to be a range of reasons why a person would give up their child, from not being at the right age to not having the right circumstance to finances to religious things that get in the way, all sorts of reasons, even personal reasons. Their own traumas were not healed, so they can't deal, and they take the selfish route, one would say, and they give up their child for whatever reasons. There's many, many reasons why a mother would put up her child for adoption. And it's very important that we understand that those that have been adopted are, even if they are in a good home and they're good situated and they have everything they need mentally, it's still something to cope with. It's still something that needs to be talked to them about, because I'm seeing a pattern now with the people that I'm meeting that are adopted, and the emptiness that they seem to harness, like the empty feeling of rejection, and it's even worse when other people in their life do reject them, even though it's for whatever specific reasons. It's going to trigger that same abandonment issue, that same resentment, that same anger, And a person can carry themselves very well, but it all depends on what their actions are going to be, because if they're going to do things based off of negative emotions and there's a part of them that's not fully healed at all, there's no closure there, which is going to be very difficult to get, but we can give ourselves that closure. You don't get it from anybody else but yourself. They may act in certain ways, especially if they have other traumas on top of that. Because what I've noticed is the mentality, a person's usually stuck. Let's say I have a trauma that happened when I'm 6, or a trauma that happened when I'm 14, 13, or something like that. Like those different traumas, when something triggers me back to that moment, it's the mentality that I'm going to react with emotionally, that it's almost like a time capsule. It's almost like you're stuck in that mentality, that age, and that's how you're going to respond. And that's why you have a lot of people doing petty, childish things, because technically their inner child's not healed yet. They're still interacting with their inner child, but not in a positive way. And there's no healing there because the lesson's not being learned. But another thing I'm noticing is that the whole industry itself, when it comes to the orphanages and stuff, and people that adopt specifically, I'm talking about certain cults and certain religions and certain people that purposefully adopt children that have been abandoned or have been orphaned or anything like that, knowing full well the traumas they've experienced or the mental anguish that they go through, or that sort of power over an individual allows them to be a perfect vessel to harbor certain negative energies, and also to be easily brainwashed and easily manipulated and easily controlled. That sense of loss, that sense of not having that closure, that can leave an individual open. Like I said, the lower vibrational frequency that you resonate at, the more susceptible you are to negative energies or entities. So knowing full well there are certain people that purposefully adopt children so that they can manipulate them in certain ways, so that when they're older, when they have groomed them to be a certain way, that they will achieve certain things out of those individuals, like they're mindless drones. Not to say that they are, but they can be manipulated very easy. And I'm noticing a pattern with the people in my life that are adopted, including some of my own family members, and the way that they function, the way that they interact with me specifically, and the way they interact with other people, and how they can be so charming and how they can be so clever and very, very intelligent, but how that emptiness inside is a huge catalyst and a huge issue, and it allows them to hold on to those negative energies, which can be dangerous. And it's almost like certain societies and certain cults and certain religions and stuff, they will purposefully adopt children knowing full well they can use them in whichever way they see. So if that child is gifted, if that child has a lot of talents, if that child is powerful in the mind, they can use that for their own benefit, not for the child's, but for their own benefit. If the child remains asleep, if they remain brainwashed and stuff, that whole idea of using their emotions against them and using the fact that they feel abandoned and all that, and using those traumas against an individual, they can use that to their advantage to stay in power. And it's almost like a handle. It's almost like a handle on the child. So they can use them in whichever way they see fit. And I've watched this with every single person that I interact with that is adopted, and how they've been either controlled or manipulated or used, not all of them, but the majority of them, and how they still hold this resentment inside, and how they still hold, no matter how pleasant they are. Most of them are very well socialized, like they can get along. They're not like the oddball, really, not all of them. But yeah, I've noticed that, and it scares me because it's almost like it's set up that way, to purposefully use these children into adulthood, well into adulthood, to groom them in a specific way. It's the same with the sexual side of things too. It doesn't just have to necessarily be for their gifts and stuff, but there's many different handles a person can have in a person, another individual or a child, and it goes from addictions to control of emotions, which controls the overall person. So if they're completely brainwashed and low vibrational, they're like a vessel that are just being used, almost like the idea of Pinocchio with strings and stuff, like a puppet. And most of them will go their whole life not knowing they are being used, and some of them will know full well they're being used, and they will be what do you call that, obedient to their handler, and they will be obedient to the energies or the entities, and they will be obedient to the negative stuff and create conflict, chaos, and just use other people because that's how they were groomed. That's all they know. They don't know love, they don't know compassion, they don't know empathy or sympathy or anything like that. They were never shown that. They never really got to experience that. And when they did, it was confusing to them, probably because that's not what their interest is. They've been groomed a certain way. So I'm not saying every person that's adopted, like I said, I personally may have felt certain things and I can understand fully, but I have not been in the system like that. So I can only say so much, but this is what I've learned. This is what I've experienced with my interactions with people that have been adopted. And it's scary to think that these individuals aren't given a chance. And if they are groomed in a certain way that they are to be used. And that's like keeping them as a slave, which is not okay. Because it's already an insult to them to begin with to be an orphan or to lose family or to be put up for adoption or something like that, to be given away like that, despite what the circumstances, because sometimes it's out of the parents' control, but it's already bad enough as is. And then to be taken in by people that have malicious intent or negative intent for that child is even worse. So this is something very specific that I wanted to talk about. I was debating on how I was going to deliver this message, but if you have adopted a child and you have good intention, please do your very best to try to help them cope with that sort of emotion. And if you know somebody that is adopting children and they're doing something malicious, speak up and say something. Do not let it go under the radar. Do not let it get out of control, because these ones specifically, the adopted children, are what they use and they have been using to integrate into society, to use against the general public, against the whole agenda, against this whole making things better. It's just to use certain people in place to keep a sort of powered reign going and to keep the chaos and conflict going. And it's not okay, because those children deserve a good life too. Those children deserve a good opportunity to get in touch with themselves and be at peace. And a lot of them are very gifted and very special, because the bloodlines, even, I'm not even going to get into that, but it's set up, a lot of them, it's set up for them to not know their lineage, to not know where they came from, to not know who the F they are. And when you don't allow somebody to know who they are, how can they ever have control over themselves or be in touch with themselves and their highest power, their highest gifts or versions that are meant for them?